The sun was setting over the small town square, painting the cobblestone streets with a warm golden glow. The air smelled faintly of roasted peanuts and fresh flowers from the nearby vendor carts. People bustled around, some carrying shopping bags, others walking their dogs or chatting with friends. Amidst this lively scene sat an 18-year-old girl at a folding table. Her name wasn't important to most passers-by, but her story would soon touch many hearts. Her table was simple, a plain wooden surface covered with vibrant paintings. Each canvas told its own tale: a serene sunset, a playful puppy chasing butterflies, a lone tree standing tall against a stormy sky. There was something special about these artworks. They seemed alive, as if they carried pieces of the artist's soul within them. Above the table hung a hand-painted sign that read, "Art for Life. Every purchase helps me fight cancer." It caught the attention of a few curious onlookers who stopped to admire the work. The young artist behind the table had a quiet strength about her. She smiled warmly at everyone who paused, even though it was clear she was tired. Her face was pale and dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her smile remained genuine. If you looked closely, you could see the slight tremble in her hands as she adjusted one of the paintings. This wasn't just any teenager selling art to make pocket money. It was someone fighting for her life. 6 months ago, her world turned upside down when doctors delivered news no one ever wants to hear: leukemia. The diagnosis hit hard, not just emotionally but financially too. Treatments were expensive, and while her family did everything they could to support her, the bills kept piling up. They sold old furniture, cut back on groceries, and even borrowed money from relatives, but it still wasn't enough. Chemotherapy sessions loomed ahead, each one requiring funds they didn't have. Determined not to give up, she turned to what she loved most: painting. Art had always been her escape, her way of expressing emotions words couldn't capture. Late into the night, despite the fatigue weighing her body down, she painted. Stroke by stroke, she poured her hopes, fears, and dreams onto the canvas. Some paintings reflected her pain, the stormy skies and broken branches, but others radiated hope like sunrises breaking through clouds. Each piece held meaning, every brushstroke a reminder that she was still here, still fighting. Setting up the booth in the town square was scary at first. What if no one liked her art? What if people walked past without giving her a second glance? But deep down she knew she had to try. So armed with courage and a stack of paintings, she ventured out into the world. To her relief, people started stopping by. Some complimented her talent, others asked questions about her technique, and a handful bought pieces right away. Every sale felt like a victory, not just because of the money, but because it meant someone believed in her. As the day wore on, more and more people gathered around her booth. A mother knelt beside her child, pointing out a colorful painting of a field full of daisies. "Look how happy this makes you feel," she said, before purchasing it as a gift. An elderly man picked up a landscape featuring rolling hills under a starry sky. "This reminds me of my hometown," he murmured, his voice thick with nostalgia. He handed over cash without hesitation, leaving with a smile. Despite the growing crowd, the young artist stayed humble. She thanked each customer, sincerely, sometimes sharing snippets of the stories behind her paintings. One woman listened intently as she explained how a particular piece represented resilience, a lone tree enduring harsh winds. "That's beautiful," the woman whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're incredibly brave." Though grateful for the support, the artist couldn't shake off the worry gnawing at her mind. Would it be enough? Could her art really help cover the cost of her treatment? These thoughts lingered as she glanced at the dwindling stack of paintings on her table. Still, she reminded herself why she was doing this: to fight for her future, for her family, and for the chance to keep creating art. Little did she know, her life was about to change forever. Unbeknownst to her, someone extraordinary was making her way through the crowd, drawn to the buzz surrounding the young artist's booth. This person wouldn't just buy a painting, they would ignite a chain reaction that would ripple far beyond the small town square. But for now, the artist focused on the present moment, smiling at the next passerby and hoping her art could continue to inspire. As the evening deepened, the golden light of the setting sun began to fade, replaced by the soft glow of streetlights. The crowd in the town square thinned out slightly, but a steady stream of curious onlookers still wandered by. The young artist sat at her booth, her energy waning but her spirit unbroken. She adjusted the paintings on her table, ensuring they faced outward so passers-by could see them clearly. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked, though she tried to hide it. Every movement took effort, but she refused to let exhaustion win. Just then, a woman approached the booth. She stood out from the rest, not because she was flashy or loud, but because there was an air of purpose about her. Dressed in a sleek blazer and heels, she carried herself with confidence, her sharp eyes scanning the artwork with genuine interest. At first glance, she looked like any other potential customer, perhaps someone browsing for a gift or decoration. But something about her demeanor suggested she wasn't here just to shop. The artist offered her a polite smile. "Hi, thank you for stopping by," she said softly, her voice tinged with both hope and hesitation. The woman nodded, her gaze fixed on one particular painting, a large canvas titled Hope Rising. It depicted a solitary tree standing tall against a stormy sky, its branches stretching upward as if reaching for sunlight breaking through the clouds. There was something hauntingly beautiful about it, a mix of struggle and triumph that seemed to resonate deeply with anyone who looked at it long enough. "This is stunning," the woman murmured, her tone thoughtful. She leaned in closer, studying the details, the intricate texture of the bark, the swirling chaos of the storm, the faint glimmer of light piercing through the darkness. For a moment, she didn't say anything else, simply absorbed in the painting's power. The artist watched, her nervously unsure of how to respond. She had poured her heart into this piece, creating it during one of her darkest nights when fear and uncertainty threatened to overwhelm her. To see someone connect with it so intensely made her chest tighten with emotion. After what felt like an eternity, the woman finally spoke again. "How much for this one?" she asked, gesturing toward Hope Rising. "It's $500, the artist replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She braced herself for the usual reaction, hesitation, maybe even a polite decline. After all, not everyone was willing to spend that kind of money on art, especially from an unknown artist selling pieces on a folding table. But instead of hesitating, the woman reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet. Without a word, she handed over 5 crisp $100 bills. "I'll take it," she said firmly, her expression unreadable but her decision clear. The artist blinked in surprise, momentarily speechless. Thank you so much," she stammered, fumbling to wrap the painting carefully in protective paper. "This means more than I can say." The woman accepted the wrapped artwork with a small nod. Then, instead of walking away as most customers did, she crouched down beside the booth, bringing herself to eye level with the artist. "Tell me your story," she said simply, her voice gentle yet insistent. The request caught the artist off guard. She hesitated, unsure of how much to share. Strangers rarely asked about her life beyond admiring her art. Most people were content to buy a painting and move on, leaving her story untold. But there was something different about this woman, something sincere and compassionate that made her feel safe. Taking a deep breath, the artist began to speak. Slowly at first, then with growing confidence, she shared pieces of her journey. She talked about the diagnosis that had turned her world upside down, the endless rounds of tests and treatments and the financial strain that came with it all. She described the late nights spent painting, using art as a way to cope with the overwhelming emotions she couldn't always put into words. And she explained how selling her work had become not just a means of survival, but a way to reclaim some control over her life. As she spoke, tears welled up in her eyes, though she tried to blink them away. Talking about her struggles wasn't easy, but there was also a sense of relief in sharing her truth with someone who truly listened. The woman nodded quietly, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. When the artist finally finished speaking, there was a brief silence between them, heavy with emotion. "You're incredible," the woman said softly, breaking the quiet. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. And I want to help you. The artist stared at her, startled. You've already helped, she replied quickly, gesturing to the painting now tucked under the woman's arm. Buying my art, it means so much. But the woman shook her head, a determined look crossing her face. No, I mean I want to. Do more. You deserve support beyond what I can give individually. She paused, pulling out her phone. Do you mind if I record a quick video? Just a few seconds to share your story? The artist blinked in confusion. A video? For what? For my followers, the woman explained, holding up her phone. I have a platform, and I think your story needs to be heard. People will want to help, you'll see. Before the artist could protest or fully process what was happening, the woman hit record and turned the camera toward her. In a calm, practiced tone, she began speaking. Hey everyone, I'm here today with an amazing young artist who's using her talent to fight cancer. Every purchase supports her treatment, and trust me, her work is worth every penny. Please consider supporting her journey. Details are in my bio. Within moments of posting the video, notifications started flooding in. Comments poured onto the screen, filling the woman's phone with messages of encouragement, admiration, and pledges to buy the artist's work. Orders came in faster than either of them could keep track of. People from across the country reached out, eager to contribute however they could. Donations flowed into the GoFundMe page the woman set up right then and there, surpassing the fundraising goal almost instantly. The artist sat in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the sudden wave of support. Tears streamed down her face as she scrolled through the comments, reading messages from strangers who called her brave, talented, and inspiring. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope, not just for her treatment, but for the possibility of a brighter future. Meanwhile, the woman smiled, satisfied but not done yet. She glanced at the artist, her mind already racing with ideas. This is just the beginning, she said confidently. Your story has the power to inspire so many people. We're going to make sure it reaches as far as it can. And with those words, the artist realized that her life and her art was about to change in ways she never imagined. The artist sat there, her heart pounding as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The woman who bought her painting wasn't just a customer, she was someone with influence, someone capable of amplifying her story to an audience far beyond the small town square. It felt surreal, almost too good to be true. For months she had been fighting not only cancer but also the isolation that came with it. She'd spent countless nights wondering if anyone truly understood what she was going through. Now, here, she was surrounded by messages from strangers who seemed to care deeply about her journey. As the initial shock wore off, the woman leaned back against the booth, scrolling through her phone with a satisfied smile. This is amazing, she said, showing the artist a few comments. One read, Your strength inspires me. I've ordered 2 paintings. Another said, Cancer doesn't stand a chance against someone like you. Each message carried its own weight, filling the artist with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. But the woman wasn't content to stop there. Her mind was already racing with ideas on how to take this further. You know, she began thoughtfully, your art has the power to do more than raise funds for your treatment. It can inspire others who are facing their own battles. We need to find a way to share your work and your story with even more people. The artist hesitated. I don't know. I never imagined my art would reach so many people. I just wanted to help my family pay for my chemo. I get that, the woman replied gently. But sometimes life takes us places we didn't plan for. Look at what's happening right now. People are connecting with your art because it speaks to something universal. Hope, resilience, courage. You're giving them permission to feel those things too. Her words struck a chord. Deep down, the artist knew she had always painted to express emotions she couldn't put into words. But hearing someone else acknowledge the impact of her work made her realize just how powerful it could be. Still, the idea of stepping into the spotlight scared her. What if people judged her? What if they stopped caring once the novelty wore off? Sensing her hesitation, the woman placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're not alone in this, she said firmly. If you're willing, I'll help you every step of the way. Together, we can turn this moment into something bigger than either of us could achieve alone." The artist took a deep breath, letting the words sink in. She glanced around the town square, the fading sunlight casting long shadows, the hum of conversation mingling with distant laughter. This place, once familiar and ordinary, now felt like the starting point of something extraordinary. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "Let's do it." Over the next hour, the two women brainstormed ideas, their excitement growing with each passing minute. They decided to organize an online gallery where people could view and purchase her paintings directly. The woman promised to promote it heavily across her social media platforms, ensuring maximum visibility. They also talked about hosting a local exhibition, a chance for the community to come together and celebrate not just her art, but the spirit behind it. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the square bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, the artist felt a renewed sense of purpose. Exhaustion still lingered in her bones, but it was overshadowed by a spark of determination she hadn't felt in weeks. As the last few customers drifted away, she began packing up her booth, careful to fold the tablecloth neatly and stack the remaining paintings safely. "You've done incredible work today," the woman said, helping her carry some of the supplies to her car. "But this is just the beginning. Tomorrow we'll start planning the next steps." The artist smiled faintly, though her mind was already racing ahead. What would the exhibition look like? How many people would attend? Would her story really make a difference in someone else's life? These questions swirled in her head as she drove home, the quiet hum of the engine providing a soothing backdrop to her thoughts. When she arrived, her family greeted her with hugs, eager to hear how the day had gone. She told them everything: the unexpected buyer, the viral video, the outpouring of support from strangers all over the country. Her mother wiped tears from her eyes, while her father clapped his hands together, pride shining in his expression. Even her younger brother, usually glued to his video games, listened intently, asking questions about the paintings and the woman who had changed everything. Later that night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the artist found herself reflecting on the day's events. She thought about the painting titled "Hope Rising," now hanging in the woman's office. She wondered if it would remind her of this moment whenever she looked at it. More importantly, she thought about the message it carried, a reminder that even in the darkest storms there is always light waiting to break through. Sleep didn't come easily. Her mind buzzed with possibilities, fears, and dreams. But one thing was certain. She wasn't the same person she had been that morning. Something inside her had shifted, awakened by the kindness of strangers and the unwavering belief of someone who saw potential in her when she couldn't see it herself. The Chemo. Following days brought a flurry of activity. Orders poured in faster than she could fulfill them, forcing her to enlist the help of her family to package and ship the artwork. Messages of encouragement continued to flood her inbox, each one lifting her spirits a little higher. Local news. Outlets picked up the story, dubbing her the artist who paints hope. Journalists called asking for interviews, and schools invited her to speak about perseverance and creativity. At first, she declined most requests, unsure if she was ready for the attention, but the woman encouraged her to embrace it, reminding her that sharing her story could inspire others to keep fighting their own battles. One afternoon, as she sorted through emails and prepared new canvases for upcoming orders, the woman stopped by unexpectedly. She brought coffee and snacks along with a folder filled with notes and plans for the exhibition. "We're going to make this unforgettable," she declared, spreading out sketches of booth layouts and promotional flyers. The artist laughed, shaking her head in amazement. "I still can't believe any of this is real," she admitted. "It feels like a dream." "It's real," the woman assured her, her tone firm yet kind. "And it's proof that when people come together, incredible things can happen. Your art has touched lives. You've touched lives. Don't ever forget that." As they worked side by side, Finalizing details and bouncing ideas off each other, the artist realized something profound. This wasn't just about raising money or gaining recognition. It was about connection, about finding beauty in struggle and inspiring others to do the same. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, her future held more than just survival. It held possibility. The days leading up to the exhibition were a whirlwind of activity. The artist, who had once spent her evenings alone in her room painting quietly, now found herself at the center of a growing team of supporters. Her family worked tirelessly, alongside her mom helping with packaging orders, her dad handling logistics for the event, and even her younger brother pitching in by designing simple promotional graphics on his laptop. Friends from school stopped by to offer assistance, some volunteering to set up booths while others spread the word online. It was as if the entire town had rallied behind her, united by a shared desire to see her succeed. Meanwhile, the woman, who had sparked this chain reaction, stayed deeply involved, acting as both a mentor and a cheerleader. She made phone calls, sent emails, and coordinated with local businesses to secure donations for refreshments and decorations. She also reached out to other artists battling illnesses, inviting them to showcase their work alongside the young painter. "This isn't just your story anymore," she explained one evening as they sat together planning the layout of the exhibition. "It's about creating a space where everyone can feel seen and celebrated." The idea resonated deeply with the artist. For so long she had felt isolated by her diagnosis, as though no one could truly understand what she was going through. But hearing about others who used art to cope with their struggles reminded her that she wasn't alone. Together, they could create something bigger than themselves, a community bound by resilience and creativity. As the date of the exhibition drew closer, anticipation built not only within the artist, but also among the townspeople. Flyers adorned shop windows, social media buzzed with excitement, and local news stations aired segments promoting the event. People began marking their calendars, eager to attend what promised to be a night of inspiration and connection. Some came because they wanted to support the young artist whose story had touched their hearts. Others were curious to see the works of fellow creators facing similar battles. Whatever their reasons, the turnout was shaping up to be extraordinary. No, the morning of the exhibition, the artist woke early, too nervous to sleep any longer. She stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the clothes she had carefully chosen days earlier. A simple yet elegant outfit that made her feel confident despite the fatigue lingering in her body. Her hands trembled slightly as she brushed her hair, and she took several deep breaths to steady herself. Today was more than just an art show. It was a celebration of everything she had overcome and everything she hoped to achieve. When she arrived at the venue, an old community hall transformed into a vibrant gallery. She was greeted by a flurry of activity. Volunteers scurried around arranging tables, hanging paintings, and setting up lighting to highlight each piece. The air smelled of fresh paint and flowers, and soft music played in the background, adding to the warm, welcoming atmosphere. At Inbroi, the entrance, a sign welcomed visitors. Art that inspires, celebrating creativity and courage. The artist walked slowly through the hall, taking in the sight of her paintings displayed alongside those of other artists. Each canvas told its own unique story, some joyful, others raw and emotional, but all carried a sense of authenticity that drew viewers in. One corner featured sculptures crafted by a man recovering from a stroke. Another showcased intricate drawings by a teenager undergoing treatment for a rare condition. Every piece radiated strength and hope, reminding everyone present of the power of art to heal and unite. By late afternoon, the hall was nearly ready. The woman approached the artist, beaming with pride. "You've done it," she said, wrapping her in a tight hug. "Look at what you've created, not just with your art, but with your courage." Tears welled up in the artist's eyes as she looked around the room. "I couldn't have done it without you, or without everyone else who helped," she replied softly. "This feels unreal." "It's real," the woman insisted, squeezing her hand. And tonight, you'll get to see just how much your story means to people. As evening fell, guests began arriving in droves. The hall quickly filled with laughter, conversation, and the occasional sniffle as visitors paused to admire the artwork. Many lingered in front of the artist's booth, marveling at the vibrancy and emotion captured in each painting. A couple stood silently before Hope Rising, holding hands as tears streamed down their faces. Nearby, a child pointed excitedly at a colorful depiction of animals playing in a meadow, tugging at her parents' sleeve to buy it as a gift. Throughout the night, the artist moved from group to group, sharing snippets of her journey and expressing gratitude to those who had supported her. She met families affected by cancer, teachers inspired by her perseverance, and strangers who simply wanted to thank her for reminding them of life's beauty. Each interaction left her heart fuller, her resolve stronger. At one point, the woman stepped onto a small stage near the center of the hall, tapping a spoon against a glass to quiet the crowd. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice ringing clear across the room. "We're gathered to celebrate not just incredible art, but the incredible people behind it. Artists who, despite facing unimaginable challenges, continue to create, inspire, and uplift us all." She paused, glancing toward the artist standing near the back of the room. "One such person is someone I met just weeks ago in a small town square. Her talent stopped me in my tracks, but it was her courage that truly moved me. Tonight we honor her and everyone here for showing us that even in our darkest moments, there is light waiting to shine through." The audience erupted into applause, turning to face the artist as she stepped forward shyly. For a moment she froze under the weight of their collective gaze. Then, summoning every ounce of bravery, she smiled and raised a hand in thanks. The cheers grew louder, echoing through the hall like waves crashing against the shore. That night, as the exhibition wound down and the last guests departed, the artist stood alone in the now quiet hall. The lights were dimmed, casting long shadows over the empty tables and chairs. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her body, but her spirit soared. She thought about the hundreds of people who had come to support not only her, but also the other artists sharing their stories. She thought about the messages of encouragement she'd received and the connections she'd forged. Most of all, she thought about the future, a future that suddenly seemed less daunting and far more full of possibility. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from the woman. "Proud doesn't even begin to cover it. You've changed lives tonight, including your own." The artist smiled, clutching the phone to her chest. Maybe, she realized, the storm she'd been weathering wasn't just something to survive. Maybe it was also a chance to grow, to find meaning, purpose, and a way to give back. And as she turned off the lights and locked the doors behind her, she knew one thing for certain. Her journey was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. The days following the exhibition brought a wave of emotions that the artist hadn't anticipated. On one hand, there was an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the people who had attended, for the money raised to support her treatment, and for the newfound confidence she felt in herself as a creator. But on the other hand, there was also a quiet unease, a fear that the attention might fade as quickly as it had come. She worried about returning to the reality of her illness, the hospital visits, and the endless waiting rooms where time seemed to stretch endlessly. Yet life after the exhibition proved to be anything but ordinary. The outpouring of support continued, albeit in different ways. Messages flooded her inbox from strangers sharing their own stories of struggle and survival. Some wrote about loved ones they had lost to cancer, thanking her for giving them a reason to smile again. Others spoke of battles they were currently fighting, saying her art reminded them to keep going even when things felt impossible. Each message carried its own weight, filling her with both humility and responsibility. It was clear now that her journey wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who saw themselves in her story. One morning, as she sifted through emails over breakfast, she stumbled upon something unexpected, an invitation from a local school to speak at their annual assembly. At first, she hesitated, Public speaking had never been her strong suit, and the thought of standing in front of hundreds of students made her stomach churn. But then she remembered the woman's words. "Your story can inspire others." Taking a deep breath, she replied to the email, agreeing to participate. Preparing for the talk turned out to be more challenging than she expected. How could she condense months of pain, hope, and discovery into a 15-minute speech? What should she say to teenagers whose lives likely revolved around exams, sports, and friendships? Things so far removed from hospitals and chemotherapy? After hours of brainstorming, she decided to focus on 3 simple ideas: resilience, connection, and creativity. These were themes she understood deeply, concepts that transcended age or circumstance. On the day of the assembly, nerves got the better of her. As she sat backstage listening to the hum of voices beyond the curtain, her hands trembled uncontrollably. Her mom, seated beside her, held her hand tightly and whispered, "You've got this." When her name was called, she walked onto the stage, blinking under the bright lights. Hundreds of pairs of eyes stared back at her, some curious, others indifferent. For a moment, she froze, unsure of how to begin. Then she spotted a familiar face in the crowd, the woman who had changed everything. Sitting near the front row, she gave an encouraging nod, mouthing the words, "You're amazing." That small gesture broke the ice. Smiling faintly, the artist began to speak. "I'm not here to tell you my whole story," she started, her voice shaky but sincere. "But I do want to share 3 lessons I've learned over the past year, lessons that have helped me get through some really tough times." She went on to explain how resilience wasn't about being fearless. It was about finding strength when fear threatened to overwhelm you. She talked about connection, emphasizing that no matter how isolated we might feel, there are always people willing to help if we let them. And finally, she discussed creativity, not just as a form of self-expression, but as a tool for healing and growth. By the end of her speech, the room was silent, except for the occasional sniffle. When she finished, the applause was thunderous, echoing off the walls like waves crashing against the shore. Afterward, dozens of students approached her, eager to ask questions or thank her for her words. One girl handed her a folded piece of paper, whispering, "This is for you." Inside was a drawing of a tree surrounded by sunlight, a nod to hope rising. Another boy shyly admitted he'd been struggling with anxiety and said her talk gave him hope that he could find his own way forward. These moments stayed with her long after the assembly ended, reinforcing the belief that her story mattered. Meanwhile, the momentum from the exhibition rippled outward in other ways too. Local hospitals reached out, asking permission to display her paintings in their corridors. They explained that patients often felt comforted by artwork that reflected hope and perseverance. The idea thrilled her, not only because it meant her art would reach more people, but because it allowed her to give back to a community she knew so well. Soon, her paintings adorned waiting rooms and treatment areas, bringing bursts of color and emotion to spaces that were often sterile and cold. Back home, life settled into a new rhythm. Orders for her artwork slowed slightly compared to the frenzy of the exhibition, but they remained steady enough to ease the financial burden on her family. More importantly, she found joy in creating again, not just for survival, but for expression. Each brushstroke became a form of meditation, a reminder that she was still here, still capable of making something beautiful. Her relationship with the woman grew stronger too. Their daily phone calls evolved into meaningful conversations about dreams, goals, and the future. Inspired by the success of the exhibition, the woman suggested organizing similar events in other towns, highlighting the work of artists facing adversity. Together, they drafted plans, secured funding, and recruited volunteers. It was hard work, but it filled the artist with purpose. For the first time in years, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. Still, there were challenges. Some days, fatigue hit harder than usual, forcing her to put down her paintbrush and rest. Other days, doubt crept in, whispering cruel reminders of her limitations. But whenever those moments arose, she reminded herself of the connections she'd made, the people who believed in her, who saw her not as a patient or a victim, but as a fighter, a creator, and a beacon of hope. One evening, as she sat in her room sketching ideas for her next painting, her phone buzzed with a notification. A photo appeared on the screen. A mural being painted on the side of a downtown building. The design was unmistakable, a lone tree standing tall against a stormy sky. Beneath it, bold letters spelled out a single word: hope. The caption read, "Inspired by our hometown hero, this mural represents resilience and the power of art to heal. Thank you for reminding us what it means to rise above." Tears welled up in her eyes as she stared at the image. She had never imagined her work would leave such a lasting impact, not just in galleries or hospitals, but on the very streets of her town. In that moment, she realized that her journey wasn't defined by cancer or chemotherapy. It was defined by the light she chose to shine, even in the darkest storms. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly have its twists and turns, she felt ready to face them. Because now, more than ever, she knew she wasn't walking it alone. As weeks turned into months, the artist found herself stepping into roles she had never imagined. The mural inspired by her painting became a local landmark, drawing visitors from neighboring towns who wanted to see the towering tree that symbolized hope. People would stand beneath it, snapping photos or simply gazing upward, as if trying to absorb some of its strength. Some left notes taped to the base, messages of gratitude, love, or reflection. It was strange yet humbling to know that her vision had grown beyond canvas and paint, transforming into something tangible and shared by so many. But with this newfound visibility came challenges she hadn't anticipated. Strangers began approaching her in public places, grocery stores, coffee shops, even the hospital waiting room, to share their stories or ask for advice. One elderly man cornered her near the pharmacy, tears streaming down his face, recounting how his wife's battle with illness mirrored her own. Another teenager shyly handed her a sketchbook, asking if she'd glance at his artwork and offer feedback. While she appreciated the connections, the constant attention sometimes left her feeling drained. She worried about saying the wrong thing, about disappointing people who looked to her as a source of inspiration. The woman noticed the toll it was taking and gently reminded her, "You don't have to carry everyone's burdens. Just being yourself is enough." Those words stuck with her, helping her set boundaries without losing sight of her purpose. She learned to say no when needed, balancing kindness with self-care. Slowly, she realized that vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was what made her relatable. Her honesty about her struggles allowed others to open up about theirs, creating a ripple effect of understanding and compassion. Amidst all the external changes, her personal life began shifting too. Her family, once consumed by worry, seemed lighter now. Her parents laughed more often, finding comfort in the knowledge that they weren't facing the fight alone anymore. Even her younger brother, who used to tease her relentlessly, started showing signs of maturity. He surprised her one evening by setting up an easel in the backyard, inviting her to paint alongside him under the stars. For hours, they worked quietly side by side, their brushes dancing across blank canvases. When they finally stepped back to admire their creations, he grinned mischievously and said, "Not bad for a beginner, huh?" She laughed until her sides hurt, realizing how much she had missed moments like these. Her health remained a roller coaster. Some days were good. She felt strong enough to tackle multiple projects, her energy levels steady. Other days, fatigue weighed her down, forcing her to cancel plans or retreat to bed early. Chemotherapy treatments continued, each session leaving her body weaker but her resolve firmer. Through it all, her art served as both escape and anchor. On tough days, she painted abstracts, filled with swirling colors and jagged lines, channeling her frustration onto the canvas. On brighter days, she created scenes brimming with light and warmth, capturing fleeting moments of joy. One afternoon, while sorting through supplies in her studio, she stumbled upon a stack of old paintings tucked away in a corner. They were pieces she had created before her diagnosis, bright landscapes, whimsical animals, and cheerful portraits. Looking at them brought back memories of simpler times, when her biggest concern was whether a shade of blue matched the sky perfectly. She smiled wistfully, running her fingers over the textured surfaces. Then, almost impulsively, she pulled out a fresh canvas and began blending elements from those older works into something new. By the time she finished, the painting depicted a bridge connecting two worlds, one vibrant and carefree, the other raw and stormy. She titled it Between Worlds and placed it prominently in her workspace, a reminder of how far she had come. The woman stopped by later that week, her arms laden with snacks and drinks. "Working hard?" she teased, noticing the half-finished canvases scattered around the room. The artist nodded, gesturing toward Between Worlds. "This one feels different," she admitted, "like it ties everything together." The woman studied the painting intently, nodding slowly. "It does," she agreed. "It shows growth, not just as an artist, but as a person. You're not the same girl I met in that town square." Her words lingered long after she left. That night, lying awake in bed, the artist reflected on how much had changed since that day. Back then, she had been desperate, clinging to art as a lifeline. Now she saw it as more than survival. It was a way to connect, to heal, and to inspire. Her journey wasn't linear. There were still storms ahead, moments of doubt and fear. But she no longer viewed them as obstacles to overcome alone. Instead, she embraced them as part of her story, threads woven into the larger tapestry of her life. A few weeks later, she received another unexpected invitation, this time from a national organization dedicated to supporting young artists battling illnesses. They wanted her to serve as a guest speaker at their annual conference, held in a bustling city several hours away. The thought of traveling intimidated her. Hospitals and hotels didn't exactly mix well with her condition, yet the opportunity felt too significant to pass up. With her family's encouragement and careful planning, she agreed to attend. The trip proved to be both exhausting and exhilarating. Walking into the conference hall, she was struck by the diversity of attendees, young creators from all walks of life, each carrying their own unique story. Some sat in wheelchairs, others leaned on crutches, but every face radiated determination. During her speech, she spoke candidly about her experiences, weaving humor and heartbreak into a narrative that resonated deeply with the audience. Afterward, dozens of participants lined up to speak with her, sharing snippets of their lives and thanking her for giving them hope. One interaction stood out vividly. A teenage boy with a shaved head approached her hesitantly, clutching a small notebook. "I don't know if you'll remember me," he said softly, "but I was at your exhibition. Your painting helped my mom keep fighting until the end." His voice cracked, and tears spilled down his cheeks. Instinctively, she reached out, pulling him into a tight hug. Words failed her, but she didn't need them. In that moment, surrounded by strangers turned family, she understood the true power of connection. By the time she returned home, she felt both physically drained and emotionally full. The experience reinforced her belief in the importance of community, a network of individuals bound not by blood but by shared struggles and triumphs. Inspired, she decided to take her efforts further. Together with the woman, she launched an online platform where artists facing adversity could showcase their work, share resources, and support one another. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a step toward building a world where creativity became a universal language of healing. As winter settled over the town, blanketing rooftops and trees in soft white snow, the artist found herself standing in front of the mural once again. The word, hope, glowed faintly beneath streetlights, casting long shadows across the pavement. She wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck, breathing in the crisp air. Life was unpredictable, messy, and often painful, but it was also beautiful. And as long as she had her paintbrush in hand, she knew she could face whatever came next. The winter months passed slowly, each day blending into the next like brush strokes on a canvas. The artist spent most of her time indoors, bundled up in cozy sweaters and surrounded by paints, brushes, and half-finished projects. Her studio became her sanctuary, a place where she could escape the biting cold outside and focus on creating something meaningful. Despite the physical toll her illness continued to take, she found solace in the rhythm of her work, mixing colors, layering textures, and watching ideas transform into tangible pieces of art. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the frost-covered windows, she received an envelope in the mail. It was heavier than usual, its contents rustling softly when she turned it over in her hands. Curious, she opened it carefully, revealing a stack of handwritten letters from people she had never met. Some were written on lined notebook paper, others on decorative stationery, but all carried the same message of gratitude and admiration. One letter stood out. A young girl described how her painting had inspired her to pick up a paintbrush, for the first time after losing her father to cancer. Another writer thanked her for reminding them that even in pain, beauty could still exist. Tears filled her eyes as she read through the notes, her heart swelling with emotion. These strangers weren't just fans of her art. They were kindred spirits, individuals who understood what it meant to carry the weight of loss while searching for light. She realized then that her journey wasn't just about surviving. It was about connecting with others, offering a lifeline to those who felt lost or alone. Each letter reinforced this truth, grounding her in the knowledge that her story mattered, not because it was extraordinary, but because it was real. Inspired by these messages, she decided to create a new series of paintings dedicated to the people who had supported her along the way. She called it Threads of Light. Envisioning each piece as a tapestry woven from fragments of their stories. The first painting depicted a glowing thread snaking through darkness, symbolizing resilience. The second showed intertwined threads forming a radiant sunburst representing community and connection. With every stroke of her brush, she poured not only her own emotions but also the collective strength of everyone who had walked beside her. As spring approached, bringing warmer weather and longer days, the woman suggested organizing another exhibition, this time focused on collaborative art. "What if we invite other artists to contribute?" she proposed one evening over tea. "Imagine a gallery filled with works created together, showing how unity can inspire incredible things." The idea excited the artist, though it also intimidated her. Collaborating meant stepping out of her comfort zone, trusting others to share her vision. But she trusted the woman implicitly, knowing she wouldn't steer her wrong. Together, they reached out to artists from across the country, inviting them to submit pieces inspired by themes of hope, healing, and togetherness. To their delight, the response was overwhelming. Painters, sculptors, photographers, and poets eagerly joined the project, eager to be part of something bigger than themselves. The night of the exhibition arrived and the venue buzzed with energy. This time the space felt different, not just a showcase of individual talent but a celebration of collective creativity. The walls were adorned with vibrant murals, delicate sculptures, and hauntingly beautiful photographs. In one corner, a poet performed a heartfelt piece about finding courage and vulnerability, his words resonating deeply with the audience. Nearby, a musician played a soulful melody on her guitar, the notes mingling with laughter and conversation. Standing at the center of it all, the artist felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She watched as visitors moved from booth to booth, marveling at the diversity of expression. A group of teenagers clustered around a mixed-media installation, discussing its meaning animatedly. An elderly couple lingered near a sculpture made of recycled materials, holding hands as they admired its intricate details. Everywhere she looked, she saw evidence of art's power to bring people together, transcending age, background, and circumstance. At one point, the woman stepped onto a small stage, tapping a spoon against a glass to quiet the crowd. "Tonight is about more than just art," she began, her voice steady and warm. "It's about the connections we forge when we choose to share our struggles and triumphs. It's about proving that no matter how dark life gets, there will always be light if we're brave enough to seek it." She paused, glancing toward the artist who stood near the back of the room, clutching a cup of tea in trembling hands. To the person who started this journey with nothing but a folding table and a dream, you've shown us all what it means to rise above. Thank you for reminding us that hope isn't just a word. It's a choice. The room erupted into applause, the sound echoing off the walls like waves crashing against the shore. Overwhelmed, the artist stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. For a moment she couldn't speak, simply letting the love and support wash over her. When she finally found her voice, it was soft but unwavering. "I didn't do this alone," she said, gesturing to the crowd. "Every single one of you has been part of my story. And tonight I want you to know, you're part of each other's stories too." Her words hung in the air, lingering long after the event ended. As guests departed, many stopped to thank her personally, sharing hugs and promises to stay in touch. Others left small tokens of appreciation, handwritten notes, drawings, or flowers plucked from nearby gardens. By the time the hall emptied, she was exhausted yet fulfilled, her heart overflowing with gratitude. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a quieter rhythm. Orders for her artwork slowed slightly, but the online platform she had helped launch continued to thrive, connecting artists from all corners of the world. She remained active in the community, volunteering at local hospitals and mentoring young creators eager to learn. Though her health remained unpredictable, she embraced each day with renewed purpose, determined to make the most of whatever time she had. One sunny afternoon, she returned to the mural that had become such a powerful symbol of her journey. The tree still stood tall, its branches reaching skyward, defying the stormy backdrop. Someone had added tiny notes pinned to the trunk, each one bearing a message of encouragement or thanks. She smiled, running her fingers over the rough surface, feeling the texture beneath her fingertips. A familiar voice broke the silence. "Still inspiring people, huh?" She turned to see the woman standing behind her, holding 2 cups of coffee. Laughing, she accepted one gratefully. "Looks like it," she replied, nodding toward the mural. "Guess I'll have to keep painting if I want to keep up." The woman grinned, sipping her drink. "Well, lucky for you, I'm not going anywhere. We've got plenty more to do." They stood there for a while, watching as a breeze rustled the leaves overhead. Life was far from perfect, it never would be. But for the first time, she felt truly at peace. Her journey had taught her that storms may come, but they don't last forever. And as long as she kept creating, connecting, and choosing hope, she knew she could face whatever lay ahead.